So, what advice would I give to therapists working with people like me? The first thing I want to say is trust me. The second thing I want to say is don't trust me. I don't really lie, but I might choose to not tell you something if I don't want to be challenged on it. Obviously, you're not psychic and you're not going to always know that, but I guess trust what we tell you as being the best we can do, the best we can tell you then. But also sometimes, like, if it doesn't quite ring true, ask again, ask in a different way. Don't accuse us of lying, because we're not usually lying. We don't feel like we're lying. Our mental health problems can make us think we need to be deceptive because sometimes they feel like they're protecting us. Believe that our experiences are real. I've had some really, really strange experiences since being in therapy. I've had some experiences that, as someone with a PhD in psychology, I genuinely didn't think, I didn't really believe happened to people. And I've had those things happen to me. And one of the most important things has been that my therapist has 100% honoured and believed everything I've told him. He's never, ever, ever made me feel like I'm making things up or exaggerating, or, it doesn't mean he doesn't challenge me. He does. If he thinks that I'm overreacting, then he will challenge me, but he doesn't say that I'm exaggerating or making it up. He will just offer me different perspectives and try and help me to swing from an extreme viewpoint to see that there might be a more moderate viewpoint on what I'm talking about than the one that I've kind of hung on to that's causing me distress, as opposed to assuming that I'm actually deliberately making something up. Also, like, I do have delusional, hallucinatory experiences. I do hear voices. I do see things sometimes. I do struggle with the concept of reality, and I don't always know what is and isn't real. And it's really important to me that a therapist accepts my view of reality, apart from where it's causing me problems. But I'm the one who needs to bring those problems in. If it's a harmless thing, like, sometimes I like to escape into fantasy worlds, and sometimes my therapist challenges me on that because he says I'm using it as an avoidance technique, but other times he lets me because he knows that I'm in a significant amount of distress, and at that point in time it's helpful for me to have that imagination to escape into, because he knows that I can differentiate, or he knows when I can differentiate. He knows me well enough. So yeah, get to know your clients really, really well. Never, ever, ever lie to us. It's okay to make mistakes. We understand you make mistakes. You're human beings, but never lie. Don't promise us something that you can't deliver, because winning back our trust will be near to impossible. It's okay if things change, but just be honest about the fact that you were wrong. Admit your mistakes. We don't mind that at all. We don't mind that. We understand about being human and being flawed. Trust us. I've spent a lifetime making mistakes. I know all about making mistakes. I don't judge people for making mistakes. But if somebody lies to me, I might never trust them again, because it's hard enough for me to trust them the first time round. And for me, every time I trust somebody, even on a tiny, tiny thing, is a huge risk. really try and work from a perspective that no matter how difficult your client is being on a particular day, they actually are trying their best. Even the fact that they've walked into the room is them trying their best that day, even if they're being really difficult. Because I've had days, where literally being really difficult and completely non-verbal and resistant was the best I could do, but actually getting myself to the session was a big deal for me, and it was still helpful for me. And so, like, always, the fact that my therapist has always understood that whatever state I'm in, I'm doing the best I can because I want to get better. I really do. That's really important to me. It's important to me that the relationship feels like a real human interaction. I mean, I understand that it's a professional relationship too, and we are on a clock, and there are certain things you have to do and measures you have to fill in and reports and so on and so forth. But in order for it to be really effective, I think it really does need to feel like a real interaction. It's important just try and remember like little details that your client has told you, even if you have to write them down in their notes and check them beforehand. But like, if they've told you what their pet's called and that's important to them, remember what their pet's called. If they're I have several imaginary personas who live in my head, and they all have different names. And the fact that my therapist remembers their names, that's really important to me. That I can refer to a drawing I showed him 6 months ago, and he will be like, oh yeah, I think I remember the one. Or he'll be honest and say, no, I don't remember that one, can you show me again? So it's the honesty in the relationship is really important, feeling like it's real, because that's how I've been able to trust. And if I wasn't able to trust, I wouldn't have been able to make progress. So I guess the best way to do that is to listen really carefully and ask us to explain again if we're not making sense, because I appreciate that I don't always make sense, because my brain doesn't work quite the same way as other people's. So what I say might not make sense to you, and please feel free to ask me more questions and find out and try and figure out what I mean rather than make assumptions. I guess what's really helpful for me is if you repeat back what you think you've understood me to have said, and then I can confirm or add extra information to try and help you to understand as best I can what it is that I mean, because some of the experiences that I have, they're not easy to put into words, and they're not easy for people who've never experienced them to understand. So yeah, and I understand that. I think your clients understand that, so it's okay to try and it's okay to work to understand what they're trying to tell you. Be open to the fact that you make mistakes too, and just admit to them. That's the best approach, because everybody makes mistakes, and also that you might have made a mistake that you weren't aware of, and that if you're working with a client like me, your client could become inappropriately angry and withdrawn and react very, very badly to that because of difficulties with attachment and so on, and really overreact. And it's important that it's been important to me when that's happened in my therapeutic relationship, that's been honoured, and that my therapist has actually said, like, has just like apologised and said, like, I'm sorry that I understand now that the thing that I did made you feel that way, and explaining my intentions in doing that was this, but I also understand that it wasn't the right way to go about it with you. And just that sort of that level of honesty is really, really important. So yeah, be yourself, because if you're not yourself, it can't be a real relationship. But also keep your boundaries. It's important for the relationship to feel real, but I'm not there to hear you tell me how you've experienced whatever, you know. It is my therapy, not yours. And sometimes it's helpful to know that you can relate to what I'm talking about. But I've had therapists who really overdo it on the sharing, and it makes me feel unsafe, because it makes me feel like they haven't fixed the things that I'm trying to fix. So how can they help me fix them? So yeah, be boundaried, and don't make it all about you.